The grandfather clock in the opulent foyer chimed 7 times, each gong a small hammer against my nerves. I hurried up the walkway to the imposing colonial on Magnolia Heights Lane, my boots crunching on the pristine snow. My breath plumed in the December air, a visible sign of the anxiety churning in my stomach. I was late. Again. In my gloved hand, I clutched a small, dark-stained wooden box. I'd carved the intricate lid myself over the last 3 weeks, a tiny, hopeless peace offering. I already regretted bringing it. It felt small and foolish against the backdrop of this mansion. Before I could even press the bell, the heavy oak door swung open. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. Scarlett, there you are, sweetheart. Grandpa Theodore enveloped me in a bear hug the moment I stepped onto the polished marble. His silver hair was combed perfectly, and the familiar, comforting scent of his aftershave, cedar and spice, was the first genuine thing I'd experienced all day. He held me at arm's length, his eyes twinkling. "It's been too long. Now tell me," he boomed, his voice echoing in the cavernous hall as we moved toward the dining room. "How are you enjoying the new house?" The question landed like a grenade. The clinking of silverware stopped. My father, Roland, dropped his fork, the sharp clang against the porcelain plate unnaturally loud. His wife, Tanya, froze mid-pour, a stream of red wine hovering dangerously over the rim of her crystal glass. Even my half-sister, Laura, just looked up, her expression one of bovine confusion. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. The air in the room felt vacuum-sealed. "What house?" My voice came out as a strained whisper. The words stuck in my throat, dry and sharp. Grandpa Theodore's broad smile wavered. He looked from me to Roland, then back to me, deep furrows forming between his brows. "What do you mean, what house?" he asked, his jovial tone evaporating. "The house on Summit Street, the graduation gift." My mind was a blank. Summit Street? "I wired $480,000 last month," Theodore continued, his voice hardening as he stared holes into my father. "Roland said you'd picked it out, that it was perfect for you to start your career." Roland shot up from his chair, his napkin falling to the floor. "Dad, please," he said, his voice tight with false heartiness. "We can discuss this later. Scarlett just arrived. The roast is getting cold." "I'm not hungry," I said, my voice suddenly clear. "Sit down, Roland," Theodore commanded. He never took his eyes off me. "Scarlett, you know nothing about this, do you?" My stomach plummeted, a sickening lurch that left me cold and dizzy. I didn't need to answer. The truth was a blinding, ugly spotlight on all of us. I saw my entire life with them in a rapid, painful slideshow. My childhood squeezed into the drafty converted attic while Laura sprawled in her princess bedroom 2 floors below. My mother, a ghost I'd never known, replaced by Tanya when I was 4. I saw my father's face when I'd told him I got into architecture school. Not pride, just mild inconvenience. "There's no money for that right now, Scar. You know how it is." I saw the last 3 years working graveyard shifts at Jimmy's Diner, smelling like stale coffee and grease, sketching building plans on napkins during my 3 a.m. break. My studio apartment, so small my drafting table doubled as my dining table. And I saw this. The grand dining room, the crystal chandelier, the polished mahogany. It was all a stage set. I'd been so pathetically grateful for the Christmas invitation, thinking it was a thaw, an inclusion. How wrong I was. "Sam, sweetheart," Tanya cooed, her voice dripping with venomous sweetness. "Tell everyone about your little drawing club. Isn't that going well?" The obvious deflection made my cheeks burn. "I'd like to know what Grandpa means," I said, my voice shaking. Theodore stood, placing his palms flat on the table. "That money, Roland," he said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble, "was for your daughter. It wasn't for that monstrosity of an SUV Tanya is driving. It wasn't for Laura's new horse or her equestrian lessons." "Dad, you don't understand. It's a complicated asset." Roland sputtered. Then uncomplicate it, Theodore snapped. I looked at the wall of smiling family photos. Vacations, birthdays, graduations. I wasn't in them. Or, no, I was in a few, standing awkwardly at the edge. The ones taken during Grandpa's visits. You've been using me, I whispered, the realization sucking the air from my lungs. You only invited me when he was coming. Roland had the decency to look away. Tanya just stared at her plate. Pack your things, Scarlett, Grandpa Theodore said, his voice leaving no room for argument. You're coming to Dayton with me, now. Dad, don't be dramatic, Roland's voice cracked with panic. We are still a family. I stood, my legs feeling like hollow tubes. I looked at the three of them, Roland red-faced, Tanya dabbing at non-existent tears, Laura just looking confused. The perfect smiling family. I'll get my coat, I said. I walked out of the room, leaving the small wooden box I'd carved for them sitting, unopened, on the hall table. 3 days later, I was in a different world. Theodore's condo was a glass-walled sanctuary on the 30th floor, overlooking the winter sprawl of Dayton. The bank statements were spread across his massive granite kitchen island like a blueprint of betrayal. Here, Theodore said, his finger tapping a line item. The wire transfer, $480,000. Sent from my account to Roland's. I stared at the memo line until the letters blurred. Scarlett Carson home purchase. Money I never saw, a house I never knew existed. And here, he said, sliding a folder across the counter. Printed emails. My father's casual, breezy tone discussing Scarlett's house and what's best for her future. He was acting on my behalf, he'd told Theodore, managing my graduation gift. He told me he was putting it in an escrow account for me, I whispered, remembering a vague phone call a month ago. He said it was a surprise from Grandpa, but that I couldn't touch it until I graduated, that he was managing it. Theodore's jaw tightened. He pushed another document toward me, the property records for the house on Summit Street. Sole owner, Tanya R. Carson. My hands were shaking. I felt sick. There's one more, Theodore said, his voice grim. He placed a single sheet of paper in front of me. A durable power of attorney. It gave Roland Carter sweeping, unconditional control over all my financial affairs, present and future. It was dated 6 weeks ago. At the bottom was a signature, Scarlett A. Carson. Is this your signature, Scarlett? I traced the crude, looping scrawl. It looked nothing like my own. It was a clumsy, almost insulting imitation. No, I whispered, the word catching in my throat. I have never, ever seen this document before. I never signed this. Theodore nodded once, a short, sharp motion. Forged. That's a federal offense, Scarlett. That's prison time. I leaned against the counter, the cold stone seeping through my sweater. The glittering Dayton skyline outside the window seemed indifferent to the fact that my world was collapsing. My own father. It gets worse, Theodore said, turning to his laptop. He pulled up a spreadsheet. This, he said, was your college trust fund. I established it the day you were born. It should have had nearly $300,000 in it by the time you turned 18. I stared at the screen. The account label, Scarlett's Trust. The balance, $113.38. He emptied it. Theodore's voice was tight with a rage I'd never heard from him. Years ago. I saw the withdrawal history. Tuition, $45,000. European tour, $22,000. Equestrian Center, $18,000. That's Laura's private school, I stammered. That's their trip to Italy. That's her horse. All those nights at Jimmy's Diner. The crushing weight of my student loans. The cramped apartment where the hot water ran out in 3 minutes. All of it while my college fund paid for their luxury lifestyle. And this, he said, clicking another link, your mother's inheritance. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She wanted you to have it. I never even knew. $42,000. diverted 2 years ago to an account for home renovations. I remember that, I said, my voice hollow. Tanya bragging about the Italian marble and heated floors in their new bathroom. And finally, Theodore said, his face ashen, he opened a credit card in your name. The balance is $23,400. He's been making minimum payments from a ghost account. Your credit score is in shambles. My identity, my future, stolen. How? I finally asked, sinking onto a stool. How could he do this? He orchestrated it, Theodore said, closing the laptop. Tanya was the enabler. She's the one who deliberately isolated you, kept you away from family events unless I was visiting. She created a narrative that you were disinterested, antisocial, that you didn't want to be part of the family. And Laura? An unwitting beneficiary, Theodore said softly, raised to expect everything and question nothing, a victim in her own way. I walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. The city lights below blurred. What happens now, Grandpa? Now, he said, coming to stand beside me. We fight. But first. He walked to his office and returned with a large leather-bound portfolio. He opened it on the counter. Inside were my drawings. Crude, childish sketches on notebook paper, dated and preserved in plastic sleeves. A tower with 100 windows, a bridge that looked like a bird's wing, a house with an elaborate, impossible floor plan. I was 8, 9, 10 years old. You kept these? I whispered, my throat tight. I always knew you were the builder in the family, Scarlett, he said quietly. Not Roland, with his get-rich-quick schemes. Not Laura. You. He pointed out the window at the skyline. They tear things down. You build them up. It's time to build. Theodore was a force of nature. In 24 hours, my life was stripped down and rebuilt. The first call was to Marcus Thorne, a lawyer whose sharp suit and sharper eyes screamed, "Predator." When Theodore explained the situation, Marcus's only response was a thin, terrifying smile. Fraud, forgery, and identity theft. I can work with this. The second call was to the dean of Dayton University's architecture program. Theodore was a major donor. She's transferring, he'd announced. She'll need an immediate review for the advanced placement studio. By that afternoon, I was walking the campus with Professor Jennings, the department head. She looked over my diner napkin sketches and the few formal plates I'd brought. Your fundamentals are raw, but your concepts are ambitious, she said, peering at me over her glasses. Good, we can work with ambition. Theodore's final move was to give me a desk at his development firm. Part-time, he said. I need someone to review blueprints who actually knows how to read them. You'll be assisting my senior partners. That's where I met Ethan. He was another intern, a graduate student with kind eyes and a quiet intensity. He saw me struggling with the firm's complex CAD software on my first day. The rendering engine is tricky, he said, pulling up a chair without asking. Here, let me show you a shortcut. He offered help without an agenda, friendship without a price tag. It was so foreign, I almost didn't trust it. This is the first step, Scarlett, Marcus said, his office as sterile and precise as he was. We file a police report. This moves it from a family dispute to a criminal matter. Are you prepared for that? I thought of the $23,000 of debt in my name, of the diner, of my mother's stolen inheritance. Yes. Filing the report at the Dayton Police Precinct was surreal. The officer taking my statement was bored, treating it like a stolen bicycle until I said the words, forged power of attorney and $480,000 wire transfer. His head snapped up. Ma'am, this is grand theft and identity theft. I know. The second step, guided by Marcus, was to freeze my credit with all 3 bureaus. As I clicked the final confirmation online, I felt a jolt, like pulling the pin on a grenade and dropping it at my feet. There was no going back. The explosion was immediate. My phone, previously silent for weeks at a time, lit up like a Christmas tree I actually wanted to set on fire. The first was a voicemail from Roland, panicked. "Scarlett, pick up. You've made a terrible mistake. This is a misunderstanding. You're going to ruin everything. Call me back." The second came an hour later, furious. "How dare you? After everything we've done for you, you're destroying this family. You ungrateful—" I deleted it. Then came Tanya's volley. She was too clever for voicemails. Her campaign began on social media, a vague post about the pain of loving a difficult child, a shared article about the tragedy of ungrateful children, emojis of broken hearts. I blocked Roland. I blocked Tanya. The silence that followed felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in my life. Theodore had helped me secure a new, clean apartment near the university, one with a security guard and a solid deadbolt. While unpacking the few boxes I'd retrieved from my old studio, I found a worn manila folder. Inside were old car repair receipts, expired insurance cards, and a folded, official-looking document. I unfolded it. A limited power of attorney. I'd signed it 5 years ago. I remembered Roland complaining about having to leave work to co-sign the loan for my first car, a 10-year-old rust bucket. This document allowed him only to sign the auto loan paperwork on my behalf. I stared at the signature at the bottom. Scarlett A. Carson. My real signature. Clean, sharp, with a distinctive angular S. It looked absolutely nothing like the sloppy forgery on the document Roland had used to steal the house money. My hands shook. I grabbed my phone and called Marcus. "I have it," I said, my voice breathless. "I have proof, a real POA I signed, and it doesn't match the forgery." There was a pause on the line. I heard Marcus inhale sharply. "Scarlett," he said, his voice dropping an octave, "don't move. Don't email it. Don't text a picture of it. That is the smoking gun. That one document proves forgery beyond any reasonable doubt. Bring it to my office. Now." I was practically floating when I arrived at Theodore's firm the next morning, the original document safely in Marcus's vault. We had him. I was sketching a site plan at my new desk when the shouting started in the lobby. "I know she's in there. Let me see my granddaughter." It was Roland's voice, booming and aggressive. The frosted glass door to our office suite rattled in its frame. Evan, who was reviewing a cost estimate nearby, instinctively moved to stand beside my desk. Theodore stood, his shoulders squared. "Stay here, Scarlett," he ordered. He strode to the door and opened it just enough to block the entrance with his own body. "This is a place of business, Roland," Theodore said, his voice dangerously calm. "You are trespassing. If you want to speak with my granddaughter, you can make an appointment through her lawyer." "Lawyer? Don't you lecture me about lawyers, old man. The whole family is calling. Even your sister Marjorie thinks you've lost your mind, that Scarlett needs to make peace." "Peace requires honesty, Roland, a concept you seem unfamiliar with." "You're going to regret this," Roland snarled, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "I'm warning you. Have you seen what they've been posting about your development company? Anonymous reviews, substandard materials, delayed timelines, a structural integrity issue in your last building. That could really hurt your reputation, Dad. All this over one ungrateful girl." Theodore didn't budge. "Get off my property, now." The door closed, leaving a heavy silence. Theodore returned to his desk, his face flushed, but composed. "Well," he said, attempting a smile, "that was invigorating." "He's threatening your business," I said, the guilt a crushing weight. "He's posting fake reviews. This is because of me." "Reviews don't build houses, Scarlett," Theodore said, waving his hand dismissively. "Quality does. And fraud doesn't win court cases. Evidence does." I felt sick with guilt all day. That night, I returned to my new apartment, my mind racing over Roland's threats. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped off the elevator. My door was slightly ajar. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pushed it open slowly. "Hello?" The apartment was destroyed, But it wasn't a normal robbery. My new laptop was sitting on the kitchen counter. My wallet was on the table. The small TV was still on the wall. It was a targeted hit. Cushions were slashed. My mattress was flipped. My desk had been emptied, its contents strewn across the floor. And the small metal file box where I kept my personal documents, my birth certificate, my social security card, my old school transcripts, was gone. I had given Marcus the original POA, but I'd kept a certified copy in that box just as a backup. No. I checked my desk drawer again, frantically. My copy was gone. I ran to my closet, the unpacking boxes. I tore through the one labeled Old Files. It was empty. I'd moved everything into the metal box. I called Marcus, my voice trembling. He broke in. Someone broke into my apartment. Are you hurt? Call the police. No, I'm fine, but Marcus... He knew what he was looking for. He didn't take my laptop. He took my personal documents. He took the certified copy of the limited POA. There was a long, heavy silence. And the police report for the break-in? Marcus finally said. What good will it do? It's gone. File it anyway, he said, his voice tight. But Scarlett, you need to understand. Our smoking gun is now compromised. Without that original document, our case just got much, much harder. Roland was emboldened. The theft of my documents, coupled with the lack of immediate legal repercussions, made him reckless. He knew he'd weakened my case, and now he was moving in for the kill. He found me 2 days later outside the architecture building. I was walking with Ethan, discussing a structural design problem, when Roland stepped out from behind a pillar, blocking my path. There you are, he boomed, arms crossed. Students slowed their pace, sensing the confrontation. My heart hammered against my ribs. Ethan put a hand on my arm, but I shook my head slightly. I kept walking. 23 years I raised you, Roland continued, his voice rising, forcing me to stop. And this is how you repay us? By poisoning my father against me? By turning my own family against me? I didn't turn anyone against you, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. Your actions did that. You stole from me. His face turned a deep, mottled red. The accusation, public and clear, hit him. Your mother, he snarled, pointing a finger at my face, would be ashamed of what you're doing to this family. Something inside me, coiled and tight for 20 years, finally snapped. It wasn't anger. It was a cold, pure clarity. My mother? I said, my voice carrying in the sudden silence of the courtyard. The mother whose $42,000 inheritance you stole to pay for Tanya's heated bathroom floors. That mother? A collective gasp went up from the students who had gathered. Roland's face went white. He stared at me, speechless. You okay, Scarlett? A girl from my studio group called out, stepping forward. Roland's eyes darted nervously at the audience. This is a private family matter. Then why did you confront me in public? I shot back. I saw a campus security officer approaching, summoned by someone in the crowd. Roland saw him too. He took a step back, his bravado crumbling. This isn't over, he seethed, pointing at me. But it was. The public confrontation was a tactical error on Roland's part. He'd shown his hand. When I told Theodore what happened, his face was stone. He picked up his phone. Helen, get me legal. I want Roland Carter's partnership extension terminated, effective immediately, and call security. He is no longer permitted in this building. The money tap was shut off, instantly. Marcus, meanwhile, used the police report from the break-in and the public harassment incident to file for a temporary restraining order. It may not hold, he warned me, but it puts him on notice. The cease and desist letter he sent to Roland and Tanya was a masterpiece of legal threats. It documented the fraud, the forgery, the harassment, and the suspected burglary. It threatened to release the findings to the state bar and the district attorney if they made any further contact. The first real consequence landed a week later. I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. They cut off my tuition. I'm being kicked out. This is all your fault. It was Laura. I didn't respond to Laura's text. I was too busy trying to balance my new accelerated course load with the part-time work at Theodore's firm. The stress was immense, but it was a clean stress. It was about work and progress, not survival. A week after her first text, another one came through. Meet me, Jimmy's Diner, the one near your old place. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Come alone. I have something you need. I stared at the message. It was a trap. It had to be. Roland and Tanya were using her as bait. I showed it to Theodore. It's a trap, he said immediately. I know, I said. But what if it's not? What if she's finally realized what they are? And what if she's wearing a wire or Roland is waiting in the parking lot? I called Marcus. Don't go, he said. It's a terrible idea. You're the plaintiff in a major fraud case. Do not engage with the defendants. But Marcus, we lost our best evidence. The POA is gone. My case is weaker. What if she has something? What if she has my POA? What if she stole it back from me? There was a long pause. Okay, Marcus said. You're going to go, but you're going to do it my way. You'll wear a discreet audio recorder. You will not, under any circumstances, admit to anything or make any threats. You are there to listen. And I'm sending a private investigator to sit at the counter and watch the entire interaction. If Roland or Tanya show up, you get up and walk out. Understood? Understood. Jimmy's Diner hadn't changed. It still smelled like stale coffee and bleach. I slid into a booth in the back, just as Marcus's PI, a nondescript woman in a beanie, settled in at the counter. Laura was already there, chain-smoking in the non-smoking section. She looked terrible. Her expensive clothes were wrinkled, her hair was a mess, and her eyes were red-rimmed and furious. She wasn't the sad, confused girl from Christmas dinner. She was angry. You came, she said, stubbing out her cigarette. I'm here, Laura. What's this about? They lied to me, she spat, her voice low and venomous. My entire life, they lied to me. They said you were the problem, that you were unstable, that Grandpa gave you all this money and you wasted it, and they were just protecting the family assets from you. A waitress came over. I ordered a coffee. Laura ordered another. And then you cut us off, she continued. The money stopped. I got kicked out of school. I had to get a job. I'm working retail, Scarlett, at the mall. Welcome to the club, I said, sipping my coffee. It's not funny. I went home to get my winter clothes, and they were fighting. Drunk. I heard them. She leaned in, her eyes wild. They were bragging, Scarlett. Bragging about how they handled you, how they'd fooled Grandpa for years, how they got the house. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small metallic pink flash drive. I stood outside their door and recorded it on my phone. It's all there. Mom and Dad, wasted, laughing about the forged signature. They even named the lawyer who helped them hide the title transfer. They called you the attic ghost. She slid the flash drive across the table. It stopped next to my spoon. I looked at it, then at her. Why, Laura? Why give this to me? Her face hardened. Because they ruined my life. They stole from you to give to me. And now I have nothing. You want justice? Fine. But I want revenge. Burn them to the ground. The audio file was a game changer. Laura's recording was even better than the stolen POA. It was a full, unprompted confession. This is it, Marcus said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. This is the leverage we needed. He was right. But Roland and Tanya didn't know we had it. They were still operating under the assumption that our case was weak. And they escalated. The attack shifted from me to Theodore. Roland started a whispering campaign, calling every extended family member he could. Dad's not well, he'd say. He's senile. He doesn't remember what the money was for. Scarlett is manipulating him, isolating him. She's controlling his finances. Tanya took the smear public. She contacted a local human interest blogger, spinning a tearful tale of a family torn apart by greed. She painted a picture of a confused elderly patriarch, being held hostage by a vindictive granddaughter. The story, titled Elder Abuse in Our Suburbs, was filled with innuendo and anonymous quotes from concerned family friends. They were coordinating. While the smear campaign against Theodore ramped up, they sent Laura in for one last performance. I didn't know at the time that they'd promised to pay her tuition if she just made Scarlett see reason. She chose my midterm studio review. I was in the middle of presenting my design concepts to Professor Jennings and a panel of guest critics when the door to the studio slammed open. Laura burst in, her face streaked with tears. It was a masterful performance. "How could you?" she wailed. "How could you make us homeless?" Every eye in the room, professors, critics, my entire cohort, snapped to me. My face burned. "Dad says we're going to lose everything, all because of you. Don't you care? We're your family." I was frozen, my presentation clicker hanging uselessly in my hand. Professor Jennings, however, did not miss a beat. She stood up, walked to the emergency call button by the door, and pressed it. "Campus security, please," she said into the speaker, her voice calm and glacial. "We have an unauthorized individual disrupting a class." She then turned to Laura. "Get out, now." Laura, stunned by the lack of dramatic engagement, just stood there, her mouth open, as two security officers arrived and escorted her from the building. The harassment became a flood. My phone, which I'd unblocked to coordinate with Marcus, was unusable. Voicemails from great aunts I'd met twice, all pressuring me to forgive Roland and think about how this is affecting poor Theodore. Then the text came. An unknown number. "Drop the case or Theodore's business irregularities from 2016 go public." My blood ran cold. I forwarded it straight to Marcus. "Blackmail," he replied a minute later. "A federal crime. This is the last nail in their coffin. Do not respond." This was their final, fatal mistake. They had no idea we had the recording. They thought they were cornering us. Marcus scheduled a settlement conference. Roland and Tanya arrived with their lawyer, Landon Miles, looking smug and confident. Marcus let them talk for 10 minutes. They offered a generous settlement. They would forgive the $23,000 credit card debt if I agreed to drop all other claims and sign an NDA. Marcus just listened. Then he slid a portable speaker to the center of the table. "Before we counter," he said, "I'd like to play something for you." He pressed play. Laura's recording filled the room. Roland's drunken bragging about the forgery. Tanya's shrill laughter about the attic ghost. Their lawyer's name, mentioned twice. Roland's face went from smug to sheet white in a second. Tanya looked like she was going to be sick. Their lawyer, Landon, looked at his clients with pure, unadulterated horror. "That," Marcus said, pressing stop, "is Exhibit A, Exhibit B," he continued, sliding a printout across the table, "is this text message, which constitutes felony blackmail. Exhibit C is the police report from the burglary of Ms. Carson's apartment, which we can now tie directly to you." He leaned forward. "So here is our counteroffer. You have 24 hours to sign the full quitclaim deed for the Magnolia Heights house, transferring it to Scarlett. You will sign a binding, permanent, no-contact order. You will cooperate in dissolving the fraudulent credit card and POA. In exchange, Ms. Carson may consider holding this recording back from the district attorney and the other investors you defrauded. Your move." The facade shattered. It wasn't a negotiation. It was an unconditional surrender. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for them. The financial investigation triggered by the blackmail attempt and the recording unearthed years of Roland's misappropriation from other investors. He wasn't just a family thief, he was a professional con artist. Tanya's social media campaign backfired spectacularly. The concerned friends she'd cultivated began to distance themselves, their public comments turning from sympathy to suspicion. Laura's university status was officially revoked for harassment, with a permanent mark on her record. Business partners issued public statements of support for Theodore, praising his integrity. Marcus, with surgical precision, secured a binding restraining order against Roland, Tanya, and their lawyer. The final blow, the bank, alerted by the fraud investigation, foreclosed on the luxury home on Magnolia Heights Lane. But even cornered, they were still vipers. Just as the settlement papers were being drawn up, their final desperate manipulations began. The phone rang. It was Tanya. "Scarlett, please," she sobbed. "Your father, he's in the hospital. It's his heart. The doctors, they don't think he's going to make it." I hung up and called Marcus. He called the hospital. "He's there," Marcus reported back, his voice dry. "Admitted for stress-induced exhaustion and dehydration. He's fine." The next day, Laura appeared at my apartment door, her eyes red-rimmed. "Sam, please. Dad's in the hospital. Don't you care at all? The whole family is talking about Christian forgiveness. Even Pastor Wallace called..." Pastor Wallace. The man whose new church wing Roland had funded last year. "I'm sorry, Laura," I said, and closed the door. Then came the call from their lawyer, Landon Miles, trying one last time. "Miss Carson, I'm calling with a final settlement offer. My client is willing to..." "I already have a lawyer, Mr. Miles. Goodbye." The noise was deafening. The barrage of accusations, the fake tears, the appeals to a family that never existed. It was a coordinated psychological assault, and it was working. I missed 2 days of classes. My competition deadline was looming, but I couldn't focus. And then, the one thing that could break me happened. Theodore had a minor heart episode. The doctor called it stress-induced angina. "Nothing serious," he assured me, "but he needs to rest. The man is under incredible strain." I sat by his hospital bed, watching his weathered, strong face, now pale and drawn. I saw the toll Roland's betrayal had taken on the one person who had never, ever given up on me. "I'm calling it off," I whispered, holding his hand. "I'm calling Marcus. It's not worth this. It's not worth your health." Theodore's eyes fluttered open. His grip on my hand tightened, surprisingly strong. "Don't you dare," he rasped, his voice fierce. "Don't you dare let them win. We finish what we started." The determination in his eyes steadied me. It was like a steel rod snapping into place down my spine. I went back to my drafting table that night with a renewed, cold focus. I worked until dawn broke over the Dayton skyline. 2 days later, a courier arrived at Theodore's condo while we were having breakfast. He handed me a thick legal envelope. Inside, on heavy cardstock, was a notarized quitclaim deed. My hands shook as I read the legalise. "Does hereby remise, release, and forever quit claim unto Scarlett A. Carson." All right. Title, interest, and claim. To the property located at 412 Magnolia Heights Lane. It was mine. The house I'd never seen, the one bought with my stolen inheritance, was legally mine. "We did it," I whispered, the paper trembling in my hands. Theodore smiled, the tension visibly falling from his shoulders. Marcus came through. Marcus arrived that afternoon with a thick folder, a quiet look of triumph on his face. "He's done," Marcus said, spreading the documents across the dining table. Faced with the recording and the pending investor fraud charges, Roland and Tanya signed everything. He tapped a document. "The house transfer represents partial financial restitution. It's yours, free and clear. I've already confirmed the title with the county." He pointed to another paper. "The no-contact order is permanent and legally binding. If they come within 500 feet of you, Theodore, or the university campus, they are arrested. No questions asked." What happens to them now?" I asked. Marcus adjusted his glasses. "Roland has been permanently removed from his professional organizations pending ethics investigations. His career is over. Tanya's social connections have evaporated. The community stands firmly behind you and Theodore. They have nothing left." That same evening, my phone rang. A number from the university. "Ms. Carson, this is Professor Jennings. On behalf of the faculty and the Denver Architectural Guild, I'm delighted to inform you that your design has won the competition. I almost dropped the phone. Theodore, recovered and beaming, was in the front row at the awards ceremony, watching as I accepted the recognition that would launch my career. The next day, I listed the house on Magnolia Heights Lane with a realtor Theodore recommended. "Are you offering any support to Roland's family?" the realtor asked gently. "No," I said. My voice was firm but not bitter. It was just a fact. The house sold in 1 week for $520,000, $40,000 more than Roland had paid. The proceeds were already allocated, part to pay off my student loans, part for my ongoing education. The rest, a large chunk, was seed money for the sustainable housing project I'd designed for my senior thesis. News filtered back, as it always does. Roland and Tanya were separating, the financial collapse and public humiliation having destroyed the last vestiges of their toxic partnership. A mutual acquaintance mentioned that Laura had moved in with a friend and was still working at the mall. One evening, a voicemail notification appeared. It was Laura. "Hey, Sam, it's me. I just wanted to say, I understand now. What they did. I'm sorry, for real this time." Her voice was small, stripped of all its previous entitlement. "I'm working at the mall. It's actually not terrible. Anyway, I'm sorry." I didn't call back, but I saved the message. Over dinner, Theodore mentioned retirement. "This firm needs a builder at the helm, Scarlett," he said, "not just a manager. I'm thinking you might be ready for a larger role." The possibilities stretched out before me, an open road. "I'm thinking of calling Laura back," I said, swirling the wine in my glass. Theodore just nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Family," he said, "is what we choose to make it." 2 years later, the morning sun filtered through the large windows of my own apartment, casting golden light across my drafting table. From my balcony, I could see the Dayton Mountains, a daily reminder of perspective. I was 3 months into my dream internship at Warren Architectural Solutions, and my designs were already catching the attention of the senior partners. My phone buzzed. Ethan. 2 years ago, that name would have been a question mark. Now it was just warmth. "Still on for dinner?" he asked. "Absolutely," I smiled. "Theodore is bringing that wine he won't shut up about, and I'm finally attempting my grandmother's lasagna recipe." That evening, my apartment was filled with laughter. Theodore sat at the head of the table, debating architectural theory with my old study group. Ethan moved around the kitchen with me, a comfortable, respectful partnership. "So, Scarlett," a classmate Jordan asked, "what's your family background? You never talk about where you grew up." The question hung in the air. The old me would have frozen, a rehearsed lie ready on my lips. I smiled, gesturing around the table. "I'm building my family now," I said. "Some family you're born with, some you choose." Theodore caught my eye from across the table and raised his glass. His proud smile said everything. Later, a first-year student named Eliza, who I was mentoring, joined me on the balcony. Her eyes were red. "My parents say I'm wasting my potential," she whispered. "They wanted me to be a doctor. They said architecture isn't a real career. Sometimes I feel so alone." 2 years ago, I would have absorbed her pain, made it my responsibility. Now I just listened. I offered her the resources that had helped me, and I maintained the boundaries that kept me whole. "You can love someone without sacrificing yourself, Eliza," I told her. "Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for both of you is to stand firm." Back inside, my phone lit up with a text. It was Laura. "Can we talk someday? I miss you." I considered the words. The old me would have replied in a heartbeat, desperate for that connection. The woman I was now typed back a simple, honest response. "When you're ready to build something real, I'll be here." My graduation certificate hung on my wall, my first major housing project set to break ground next month. Beside it, my winning design from the university competition, framed. After everyone left, Theodore, Ethan, and I sat in the living room, sketching out preliminary plans for a new business partnership. My own firm, funded by my talent, backed by their expertise. "You've come far, Scarlett," Theodore said, his eyes crinkling with pride. I smiled, looking at the city lights. "Family isn't who you're born to," I said, the words feeling true for the first time. It's who helps you build your life. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.